My name is Ryan Carter. I'm 31 years old. And about 18 months ago, my wife looked me dead in the eye while packing her Louis Vuitton weekend bag and said, "Either we open our marriage, or I'm leaving." No warning. No build-up. No discussion. Just a demand calm. Rehearsed. Like it was part of a podcast script she'd memorized. And here's the part that still makes my jaw tighten. She didn't even flinch when she said it. No tears. No shaking voice. Just the same chill, calculated tone she used when ordering her $8 oat milk lattes. I stared at her. Jessica, my wife of 3 years, the woman whose $38,000 wedding I had paid for in full, who once told me I was her dream stability. And I realized she didn't see me anymore. Not as a person. Not as a husband. Maybe not even as a man. Just a resource. A safe, profitable investment that had served its time. She zipped the bag, looked over at me. "You're being too traditional, Ryan. It's not like I'm asking to leave. I need to explore." And something inside me, the last part of me that believed she ever loved me, snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't even ask who he was. I just nodded slowly and said, "Okay." She blinked, maybe expecting a fight. I gave her nothing. The next morning, while she was out getting space, I changed the locks, froze the joint accounts, called my lawyer, and I poured myself a glass of scotch at 10 is done. Mill. Sharp. Because I knew. That was the moment my marriage ended. You see? People think heartbreak comes with big scenes. Crying. Throwing things. Late-night phone calls. But sometimes heartbreak is quiet. Efficient. Strategic. Just like betrayal. It's been a 1.5 years since that moment. Jessica's tried everything. Texts. Voicemails. Emails. She even showed up crying outside my office one night in full makeup and heels, as if nostalgia had a dress code. But I'm not listening. And if you've ever been used, underestimated, or made to feel like an afterthought in your own damn relationship, stay with me, because this isn't just a story about getting even. It's about reclaiming power, and what happens when a man finally stops doubting his worth. Now, I want to be clear. I didn't come from money. There was no inheritance. No trust fund kid energy here. When I say I built everything from the ground up, I mean gravel in the bloodstream. Ramen dinners and 14-hour workdays, kind of building. I graduated college with a degree in economics, a half-dead phone, and a vision board taped to the back of my closet door. While my classmates were signing offers at Deloitte and lounging into HR onboarding, I was renting a glorified closet for $300 a month to make cold calls for commercial real estate. No clients, no salary, no safety net. I ate gas station protein bars and spent my weekends door knocking until my knuckles blistered. I still remember one night, sitting in my beat-up 2008 Honda Civic, screaming into the steering wheel after a client ghosted me 3 minutes before a meeting. I'd spent 4 days preparing that pitch. 4 days of research. 4 days with no sleep. And she didn't even send a text. But I stuck it out because I didn't want to survive. I wanted to win. By year 3, I cracked 6 figures. By year 5, I co-founded my own brokerage with Jake, my college roommate, the guy with $1 million smile and zero concept of personal space. We started with 2 desks we found on Craigslist and a printer that jammed every 3rd page. But damn, we had fire in our lungs. Jake handled the people. I handled the numbers. We were unstoppable. And when that first $340,000 commission hit, I didn't go buy a Tesla. I reinvested. Because I wasn't just building a company. I was building proof. Proof that I wasn't a statistic. Proof that discipline still mattered. Proof that I had value, even when nobody else could see it. That's the version of me Jessica met. I was 26, still wearing 200 men's warehouse suits, still cutting my own hair to save money. But I had momentum. I had something raw and dangerous and magnetic. And she noticed? I met her at a networking event downtown. She walked in like she owned the floor, 5'6", long blonde hair, black dress that screamed expensive but approachable, and a voice like she'd been trained to sell luxury skincare on Instagram Live. She laughed at all my jokes, asked smart questions about the market, told me she admired self-made men. Looking back, I realized what she really admired was trajectory. I wasn't rich yet, but I would be, and that was enough. 2 years later, we were married at a vineyard in Napa. She picked the venue, the flowers, the cake, the 4-tier champagne tower, and I paid for every petal. No prenup, no conditions. Because when you're raised to believe that love is loyalty, you don't expect your partner to calculate ROI on your heart. You're probably wondering what changed. The answer is nothing. Jessica didn't become someone else. She just stopped pretending to be who she thought I wanted. And somewhere between her influencer friends, the constant thirst for more travel, more aesthetics, more admiration, I became something inconvenient. I wasn't exciting anymore. I was dependable. A traditional man with a mortgage, a business, and a schedule. And in her world, that meant boring. I'll never forget the last night we had dinner together before she dropped her ultimatum. She looked up from her phone halfway through her truffle pasta and said, "Do you ever think about experimenting? Like, ethically?" I blinked. With what? She smiled like it was a joke, but her eyes weren't joking. I read this piece about conscious non-monogamy. It's kind of liberating. I laughed. Awkward. "You're serious." She shrugged. "You work 80 hours a week. I'm lonely." It's not cheating if it's honest. That night, I stayed awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the ways love can rot while still looking perfect on paper. The next day, she packed her things. And that, my friends, was when I changed the locks. Not just on my door, but on my heart. And if you think that was the peak of the story, you haven't seen what happens when karma needs a little help. Before Jessica, before the champagne toasts and open bars and the 500 flower arches, there was just me, a Craigslist desk, and a phone that never stopped ringing. I used to joke that my first office was a broom closet with Wi-Fi. Except it wasn't a joke. It was literally a converted janitor's closet above a dry cleaner off South Congress. Rent, $300 a month. Soundproofing, 0. Hope, infinite. I'd get up at 5:30ish, hit the gym to shake off the mental fog, slam a gas station coffee, and be dialing by 7 sharp. Cold call, hang up, door slammed. I lived in a loop of rejection so brutal, I started keeping a tally on my whiteboard. Calls until breakthrough. It stayed blank for weeks. Meanwhile, my college friends were cruising through HR trainings at places like Amazon and Facebook. They had break rooms with kombucha and mental health days. I had a rice cooker and unpaid parking tickets. I used to drive around in my 2008 Civic with 180,000 miles on it, the AC long dead, and dream of the day I could afford real leather seats. Not even a Tesla, just leather. I remember once crying into a Taco Bell wrapper in that car because a deal I'd been nurturing for months fell apart the day before closing. The buyer ghosted. The seller blamed me, and I still had to cover gas to get to my next 5 showings. But I kept going, because I wasn't chasing status. I was chasing escape. Escape from being overlooked, from never being the golden kid, from the idea that I'd grow up and just become invisible. Year 2. Things started shifting. I made $73,000. I learned the game. Started seeing patterns in buyer behavior. Learned to anticipate objections before they came. I read every zoning manual in Travis County like it was the Bible. I didn't just sell spaces. I sold visions. By year 3, I finally cracked 6 figures. And that's when I met Jake again. We'd been roommates freshman year. 2 kids with big mouths and bigger dreams. He studied business. I did economics. He talked his way into campus parties. I ran the numbers behind black market textbook resales. We balanced each other out. Fast forward 6 years. And Jake was managing leases for a corporate property firm in Dallas, but itching to build something. He called me out of the blue one night while I was elbow deep in spreadsheets. Said, "Man, I'm done being a cog. You and me, we start our own brokerage. We do this right." I paused, then said, "If you bring the people, I'll bring the numbers." And that was it. We signed the paperwork in a coffee shop with a printer that ran out of ink halfway through the operating agreement. That first year nearly killed us. We shared a tiny office above a sandwich shop. The room was so narrow, if one of us stood up too fast, the other had to duck. We had one printer that jammed every 3rd page, and a coffee maker that made sludge that could probably clean rust. But we had hunger. God. Did we have hunger? Jake was a natural-born schmoozer. He could walk into a room and leave with 3 deals and 2 invitations to brunch. I was the closer, the sniper, the one who read contracts like puzzles and never missed a fine print clause. Together, we clawed our way into Austin's commercial real estate scene. And then came the big break. A developer was looking to offload a 12-story office tower downtown. Asking price, $28 million. Annual rental income, $2. $8 million. Every big-name firm wanted in. But Jake? He worked his way into that room. He talked to the developer's assistant, bought coffee for the assistant's sister, learned that the guy loved college football. Jake studied that man like an FBI profiler and got us the meeting. We worked 14-hour days for 4 straight months. I ran the comps. Jake handled the charm. We coordinated inspections, massaged the financials, and held the buyer's hand through every cold foot moment. When it finally closed, we split a $340,000 commission. After taxes and expenses, I took home $120,000. You ever see numbers like that hit your account for the first time? It doesn't feel real. I stared at that deposit confirmation like it was a hallucination. And then I went to the bank. And I got a certified check. And I walked into the dealership and bought the car I'd been dreaming about for years. No leather seats this time. Full upgrade. German. Black. Quiet engine. Loud message. That was 6 years ago. Today, we've got 23 agents. A 4,000 square foot office with a skyline view. And a receptionist who brings her dog to work and bakes cookies for birthdays. We've closed over $180 million in sales. Last year alone, I made $3 million personally. From rice cookers to private chefs. From tour suits to tailored navy wool. From "Who the hell are you?" to "How soon can you meet with our board?" And right around the time the money started to feel normal, Jessica walked into my life. She was 24, working as a social media coordinator for a tech startup that tanked 6 months later. She had a walk that made people stare, and an energy that said, "I'm used to getting what I want." She liked nice things. She liked being seen. And most of all, she liked that I wasn't just successful, I was self-made. The first time we met, she asked me how long it took to build my company. I said, 7 years. She said, "That's so hot." Looking back, I should have known. I thought she admired the effort, but really, she admired the results. We got married 2 years later. She planned every detail. The wedding cost more than my first 2 years of rent combined. The dress, $3, $200, worn for 6 hours. The flowers, $4, $500, dead by the next morning. The ice sculpture, completely unnecessary, but aesthetic, as she said. Her parents didn't pay a dime. Mine couldn't. So I did. All of it. Because I loved her. Or at least, I loved the version of her I thought was real. You know what the most dangerous lie is? Not "I never cheated." Not, "It didn't mean anything." Not even "I love you." It's this one. "We don't need a prenup. You can trust me." My lawyer's shout-out to Alan pulled me aside 2 months before the wedding. He said, "Ryan, you've built something here. You're not just a guy with a ring. You're an asset. Don't let your heart bulldoze your brain." And I listened. I really did. I drafted the prenup. Read it 10 times. Then I showed it to Jessica. She cried like I'd slapped her. Tears. Accusations. "You don't believe in us. You're already planning for divorce. You don't trust me." And I, like an idiot, shredded the prenup that night in the kitchen, right in front of her, to prove I was better than the men who guarded their money more than their vows. That moment haunts me. Not because I lost millions, but because I taught her something dangerous. I taught her that I would compromise principle for peace, that I'd bend my boundaries to protect her feelings. And trust me, she remembered. And soon, she'd start testing exactly how far she could push. But what she didn't know was that I was keeping receipts. The first crack wasn't loud. It never is. It started with little things, subtle shifts in tone, sideways glances at dinner. Phone screens flipped over the moment I walked in the room. I remember once asking Jessica why she wasn't posting me anymore. We used to be all over her Instagram brunch dates, rooftop selfies, wedding flashbacks, captioned my forever. Now it was just her, perfectly posed with captions like "healed," "not hardened," and "know your worth." Then add tax. She gave me a casual shrug and said, "I'm just curating my brand." Curating. Not living. Not loving. Curating. Like I was a stage prop in some influencer's storyline she'd already outgrown. The next shift came with her schedule. Suddenly, she was collaborating late into the evenings. Photo shoots. Events. Dinners with contacts. I wanted to trust her. Hell, I did trust her. Until one night, she came home at 1. Me. Lipstick smudged. Smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. She dropped her bag by the door and said, "Don't look at me like that. You work all the time. This is my version of building something too." I didn't respond. But that night, I opened a private note in my phone and started logging dates and times. Not to accuse. Not yet. Just to remember. Because when someone gaslights you enough, you start forgetting what's real. Then came the therapy card. One afternoon, I found a brochure on the counter. Couples Reinvented. Exploring Ethical Non-Monogamy. No note. No explanation. Just there next to the mail and her iced matcha. That night, she didn't even try to pretend. Monogamy isn't for everyone. Ryan, we can either evolve or stay stuck in outdated expectations. I remember sitting across from her at that kitchen island where we once carved pumpkins and argued about cilantro, and thinking, she really believes this is growth. But it didn't feel like growth. It felt like erasure, like everything I'd built my loyalty, my boundaries, my belief in shared commitment was just a stubborn relic of a dying value system. Jake noticed first. One morning, he leaned into my office and said, "Hey man, you good?" I looked up from my laptop. "Why wouldn't I be?" He hesitated, then said, "She was at that Fashion Week mixer last night, right?" I heard some stuff. "I'm not trying to start anything. Just keep your eyes open." Jake never got involved in my personal life. Ever. So for him to even say that, it meant something. I started paying attention. One night, I called Jessica while she was out. She didn't pick up. 10 minutes later, I got a text. "Can't talk." In deep convo. "Love you." An hour after that, someone DM'd me on Instagram. A random account. No followers. No posts. It was just one photo. Jessica. At a bar. Hand on another man's thigh. His hand, higher than it should have been. Her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the balcony with a blanket over my shoulders, watching the skyline blink like nothing was wrong. But everything was. The next morning, she came home chirping about how spiritual the night had been. She hugged me from behind, kissed my neck, asked if I wanted French toast. I nodded, numb. And while she was in the kitchen humming along to Fleetwood Mac, I opened my laptop and I backed up everything. Financials, property records, emails, everything tied to my name, my company, my life. Because deep down, I knew she wasn't just drifting away. She was preparing to pivot. 2 weeks later, she said the words, "Either we open our marriage, or I'm leaving." Delivered like a TED Talk. No emotion. Just fact. She stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, watching me like a HR rep delivering a severance package. I didn't speak. Not at first. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask who he was, how long it had been going on, whether she ever meant anything she'd promised. But all I could hear was my lawyer's voice echoing from a year ago. Don't let your heart bulldoze your brain. So I nodded. And I said, "Okay." She blinked, surprised, maybe even disappointed. Then she packed, calmly, methodically, as if she'd rehearsed it. She even took the espresso machine I bought her for our 2nd anniversary. While she was out getting space, I changed the locks. That night, Jake came over with 2 six-packs and a bottle of bourbon. He didn't say much, just handed me the drink and said, "To closure." I held the glass, staring at the amber liquid. It felt like a ritual, a funeral toast. Not for a person, but for a version of me that had died quietly in a house I paid for. She tried to come back 3 days later. Knocked like nothing had happened. I watched her through the Ring camera. She looked stunned when her key didn't work. Pushed the door. Rattled it. Then knocked harder. "Ryan, open up. We need to talk." I didn't move. Just watched as she stared at the door, like it had betrayed her too. And I thought to myself, you wanted freedom. Well, here it is. But this isn't where it ends. Not by a long shot. Because what came next wasn't closure. It was strategy. That night, after Jessica's frantic knocking faded into silence, I sat alone in the dark, watching the city lights blink like 1,000 silent witnesses. I realized something. I wasn't just hurt. I was under attack. And if I wanted to survive this, not just survive, but come out on top, I had to stop playing defense. I had to fight. I didn't rush. Revenge isn't about quick punches or loud accusations. It's about strategy, patience, precision. So, I started with the obvious. Information. Jake and I met the next morning in our office. He brought a worn leather notebook, the kind you see in movies, filled with scribbles, phone numbers, and inside jokes. But this time, it was different. I slid him my phone, opened the encrypted notes app. Every suspicious date. Every lie she told. Every location tagged on her Instagram stories that didn't add up. He raised an eyebrow. "You've been keeping a war journal." I nodded. "Call it that." Jake's eyes darkened. "Good. Because you're gonna need this." The first action I took was financial lockdown. Jessica never understood the concept of money as power. She thought love was supposed to be spontaneous, no budgets, no limits, no accountability. But love, for me, was respect. And respect meant boundaries. I transferred every joint account into my name alone. I closed credit cards she could access. Changed passwords on all digital accounts. It wasn't petty. It was necessary. That night, I sat down with Alan, my lawyer. He flipped through the old prenup draft. "You were smart not to sign. But you need a new agreement. One that protects your interests, your assets, your company, even your reputation." I nodded. Because Jessica wasn't just a wife anymore. She was a potential threat. And the one thing I learned building this business: protect your assets like your life depends on it. Because one day, it might. But the real power move: documentation. I began collecting everything. Receipts from dinners I wasn't invited to. Screenshots of deleted texts retrieved from backup apps. Witness accounts from friends who had seen her slipping away. Jake became my unofficial investigator. "She's been telling people you're the problem. That you're controlling." His voice was flat but fierce. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. How twisted had this become? I told him, "Let's make sure the truth isn't just in my head." As the evidence mounted, I devised a plan not just to protect myself, but to expose the real story. Jessica had gambled, thinking I'd fold. She underestimated two things: my resolve and my team. One evening, I sent out a carefully worded email to a select group of stakeholders, my top clients, business partners, and mentors. I framed it as a proactive update. "Due to personal circumstances, I will be temporarily unavailable for direct communication. However, my team remains fully operational, and I am taking all necessary steps to ensure the company's stability and integrity. No details, no drama, just the bare minimum to control the narrative." At home, I replaced the old locks with brand new, high-tech ones. Smart locks, biometric scanners, a keypad with a code only Jake and I knew. That door wasn't just keeping Jessica out. It was my line in the sand. A symbol that no matter what happened, my life and my future were mine to command. But the biggest risk, that evening when I confronted Jessica with the evidence, she had shown up unannounced, claiming she wanted to work things out. I let her in, the air thick with tension. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos, texts, and receipts I'd gathered. Her face went pale. How did you get all this?" I smiled, cold and calm. "Let's just say, I don't trust as easily as I used to." Her defenses crumbled. But instead of breaking down, she got angry. "You're trying to ruin me. I never meant to hurt you. You threw everything away," I said. "You chose this. Now you're begging for a reset." "Sorry, Jessica. I don't reset broken things." That night, I stood by the door and watched her leave, her heels clicking down the hallway like a ticking clock. I closed the door behind her, and for the first time in months, I felt a strange kind of peace. But this was just the opening salvo, because the battle had only just begun. And in Part 5, I'll take you through the next moves, the careful, Calculated steps I took to protect my legacy and claim my justice. How I turned the tables on a woman who thought she had all the power. And why. Sometimes, the most devastating weapon is your own silence. E-Science. You won't want to miss what comes next. The next weeks were a calculated dance of silence and strikes. I was no longer just a man betrayed. I was a tactician reclaiming territory. Every move I made felt like stepping through a minefield. One false step, and everything I built could collapse. It started with my team. I called an emergency meeting at the office, my sanctuary with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Austin's skyline. Jake was there first, already pacing nervously.
"What's the play?"
he asked. Eyes sharp. I laid it all out. The lies, the betrayal, the broken promises. But more importantly, I told them the truth, that Jessica was trying to rewrite our story, to paint me as controlling, as the villain. I handed them copies of the messages, photos, receipts, everything I'd gathered. They looked at me with a mix of shock and resolve.
"We'll have your back,"
Jake said. Always. Next. I secured the digital fortress. Passwords changed. Credit lines frozen. Access revoked. Even my email was set to forward any suspicious correspondence directly to my phone. If Jessica wanted war, she'd have to cross an ocean of security just to reach me. But the biggest risk wasn't in the office. It was at home. One night, I came back to find a note slipped under the door. "We need to talk. Please don't shut me out forever." I stared at it, heart hammering. For a second, I almost wanted to open that door. But then, I remembered the last time she tried to cross that line and got locked out. Instead, I called Jake. We met at a late-night diner, the kind with neon signs flickering in the rain, over black coffee and burnt fries. I told him, "She thinks she can walk back in and rewrite the rules. But this isn't a game she can win." Jake nodded. "Then don't play her game." So, I chose silence as my weapon. No responses to texts, no returned calls, no window dressing. Just focus. But inside, the battle was anything but quiet. Sleepless nights, restless mornings. Every time the phone buzzed, my stomach sank. Was it her? Another lawyer? Or worse, the public? Jessica had started spreading rumors in our circles, painting me as the unreasonable one. But I had my own cards. One morning, I dropped by the local cafe. A former client, Carla, approached me with a knowing look. "Ryan, I heard what she's been saying." She shook her head. "Don't let her tarnish you. You're better than that." Her words were a balm and a reminder. I wasn't alone. And then came the first mini victory. A mutual acquaintance forwarded me a video from a party Jessica attended. In it, she bragged about owning the narrative and freeing herself. But her expression, hollow. That clip was the ammunition I never planned to use until now. I started quietly sharing my side only to those who mattered. Clients, partners, friends. With clarity, with evidence, with calm. My reputation began to heal while hers cracked. But the biggest twist, it wasn't Jessica who slipped. It was her own allies. One night, Jake got a text from one of her so-called friends. "Jessica's losing it. You're gonna win this." That friend, someone I'd never met. But suddenly, a crucial ally. I smiled. Because in this game, trust is currency. And the house I built, it wasn't just made of bricks and mortar. It was built on loyalty, truth, and resilience. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. Jessica wasn't done. She was planning something. And whatever it was coming. I'll show you the fallout the moment the tables flipped. The truth exploded and how I finally stepped out of the shadows. Because sometime, the reckoning hits when you least expect it. Stay tuned. You're not ready for what's next. The day it all came crashing down started like any other sunlight filtering through the blinds. Coffee brewing. The faint hum of the city waking up. But beneath that calm, I felt it. The eye of the storm. Jessica had launched her final move, a public accusation so twisted, so cold. It could shatter reputations overnight. I was scrolling through my phone when the alerts hit. Local businessman accused of controlling and abusive behavior. Ex-wife speaks out. A video. Jessica, speaking with practiced composure, detailing her truth, accusing me of emotional abuse, financial control, and worse. Her words weren't just accusations, they were a weapon. The kind that slices clean through years of hard work and trust. I sat back, heart pounding, sweat prickling my palms. How did it come to this? The man who built from scratch, who'd poured every ounce of sweat and soul into his dream, now painted as the villain. The man who changed the locks to protect his sanctuary, labeled a tyrant. But I wasn't about to let her rewrite history. I called Jake immediately. His voice was steady but urgent. We need to get ahead of this. Now. Together. We scrambled, reaching out to clients, partners, friends, crafting statements, gathering testimonials, setting the record straight before the rumors could solidify. The next few days were a blur of phone call, interviews, and legal counsel. My body felt like it was in a constant state of fight or flight. Sleepless nights were spent reviewing every message, every email,
Looking for holes.
for leverage. But here's the thing about truth. It has a way of shining through the darkest lies, slowly. People started listening. They saw the evidence. The receipts Jessica never accounted for. The messages showing her own manipulations. The betrayal hidden beneath layers of freedom and exploration. Her allies began to distance themselves. The house of cards she built started to crumble. But the hardest part wasn't the public eye. It was what I felt inside. The ache of being misunderstood. The sting of betrayal sharper than any cut. The nights I lay awake, wondering if I was enough. Yet, through the chaos, something shifted. A clarity. A resolve. I was no longer the victim. I was the man who rose. The man who reclaimed. And when the court finally ruled, when justice found its voice, it wasn't just a victory for me. It was a statement. That truth and integrity still matter. That loyalty isn't a weakness. Jessica's reputation was shattered. Her circle fractured. And I walked away with my dignity intact. But even as the dust settled, I knew the scars would stay. The lessons would remain. And the story. It was far from over. Because sometimes, the most unexpected twist is the one that reveals who you really are. The silence after the storm was almost deafening. I sat alone in my office, the city skyline glowing softly outside my window. But inside, it felt like a battle had been fought and a war had been won. Yet the real victory, it wasn't the headlines. It wasn't the court ruling. It was what happened inside me. For months, I wrestled with the question, who am I now? Not the husband who gave everything. Not the betrayed man who locked his own door. But the man who rebuilt himself. Not from someone else's approval, but from his own broken pieces. I started waking up earlier. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I ran my hands over the keys of my piano, forgotten since college, and felt a spark. I cooked meals with intention, not just convenience. I met with Jake not only to talk deals, but to laugh like we used to. The bitterness was still there like a scar on my heart, but it no longer defined me. And the door. the one I changed the locks on. I never gave Jessica a new key, and I never will. That door is a symbol, not just of boundaries set, but of self-respect claimed. But life isn't just about doors closed. It's about windows opened. 6 months later, I launched a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds, those who, like me, were told they didn't belong. It became a passion project, a way to turn pain into purpose. Jessica. She faded from the circles we once shared. Her narrative, once loud, grew quiet. And, I believe, in her own way, she paid her price. But here's what I want you to take away. You don't need to be a millionaire. You don't need a perfect life. You don't even need forgiveness, at least not at first. What you do need is to stand up for yourself, to set those boundaries that protect your soul, to trust your gut when something feels off, and to remember, sometimes, the greatest act of love is loving yourself enough to walk away. I'm not saying my story is over. Life will always throw curveballs. But now, I have the strength and the peace to face them. And if you're watching this and feeling lost, betrayed, or undervalued, know this: you are not alone. You are worthy. And your story is just beginning. If you've ever faced betrayal, broken trust, or tough choices in love, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Because healing starts with connection. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Stay strong, stay true, and never forget, your peace is the greatest revenge. Fade out with soft piano music. City lights twinkling. Story 2. My name is Audrey Thompson. I'm 30 years old, a single mom, and an administrative assistant at a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. And nothing could have prepared me for what happened at the Thompson family lake house that summer. I stood frozen on the back patio, glass of lemonade still in my hand, ice clinking against the side. My skin flushed from the sun and the tension. My 6-year-old daughter, Lily, had just been slapped across the face by my brother, Derek. The sound echoed sharp, clean, unnatural, like someone had popped a balloon at a funeral. Lily stumbled back, eyes wide. Her little hand flew to her cheek. She didn't cry immediately, just stood there, stunned, confused. A child who couldn't yet process betrayal from family. And then she looked at me. Her lips trembled, eyes glossed over. Not because of the pain, but because she wanted to understand why no one else seemed horrified. That's when I turned and heard it. My father's voice. She needed to learn some shame, he muttered, like it was some grand philosophical truth passed down from God himself. And my mother, she laughed. Not a full belly laugh, a breathy, ladylike chuckle. The kind you use at country clubs when someone makes a cheeky joke about waitstaff. That laugh made me colder than the slap. And that's when it hit me. They weren't shocked. They weren't angry. They were fine with it. Because to them, Lily was just an extension of me. Loud, emotional, a girl who didn't know her place. And suddenly, the lemonade in my hand felt like acid. My legs were shaking, but my spine had never felt straighter. That was the moment. The moment I realized I wasn't the black sheep of this family. I was the threat. I didn't always feel like this. I used to try. God, I tried so hard. I was born into the Thompson family, Midwest royalty in their own eyes. My father, Howard, a now retired corporate attorney who could quote Wall Street Journal headlines like scripture. My mother, Eleanor, a homemaker with 3 silver cardigans and a terrifying talent for turning compliments into knives. And then there was Derek, 4 years older. High school football MVP. Ivy League grad. Youngest ever VP at some investment firm that hosted Wellness Fridays but bled its interns dry. My parents adored him. Worshipped. Really? He could have committed tax fraud in front of the IRS, and they would have blamed the pen. Me. I came out asking questions. Why did Dad always get 2 steaks and Mom none? Why did Derek get to speak over me? Why couldn't I wear blue if I felt strong in it? Just behave properly. My mother used to say through gritted teeth. Not like our Audrey. I grew up being the mirror they hated. The one that showed the cracks in the perfect frame. But I managed. Built a little life for myself. Fell in love too fast. Married too young. Jason was soft-eyed and good with words, which I mistook for safe. Lily came, 2 years later, and suddenly everything else faded. She had my dark hair and her father's blue eyes, like a contradiction carved into something divine. Then Jason cheated. 6 months with a coworker named Kara, and one barely there apology over text. Counseling didn't fix what cowardice created. By the time Lily turned 4, we were divorced. I told my parents we grew apart, but of course, they smelled blood in the water. Men don't leave happy homes. My mother sighed over the phone. What did you do? Not what did he do? Not are you okay? What did I do? Lily and I built our own rhythm. Our small Chicago apartment smelled like lavender and old takeout. We read books every night. She sang. Constantly. In the bath. At breakfast. In the middle of Target. Her voice was this bright, unruly thing, like wildflowers growing through concrete. And I had made a silent vow the night I held her for the first time in that hospital. You will never question your worth. Not like I did. So, when the invitation to the annual Thompson Lake House reunion arrived complete with an itinerary and a dress code, I hesitated. It had been 3 years. You sure about this? My best friend Tara asked while we packed Lily's overnight bag. They're still her grandparents, I mumbled. She deserves to know where she comes from. Tara raised an eyebrow. You mean the people who call you overly emotional and still correct your pronunciation of almond? I sighed. She loves the lake. I can handle a weekend. But as I buckled Lily into the back seat, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I told myself it was nerves. But it wasn't. It was memory. The lake house was a 3-story monument to old money and new ego. Weathered cedar siding. Stone fireplace. And a porch that wrapped around like a smug smile. My modest sedan looked embarrassed next to Derek's gleaming BMW. Lily was bouncing with excitement. Can I swim right away? We'll say hi first. I smiled, smoothing her hair. Then swim. My mother greeted us at the door in cream-colored linen. Her hair perfect. Makeup set like concrete. There you are, she said, eyes scanning my flats, my sunburned shoulders. Then to Lily. Well, hello? Darling. Her voice warmed 1/2 degree. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and forced civility. Derek emerged from the kitchen, holding a whiskey glass like it was an Oscar. Well, if it isn't our prodigal sister. He smirked. And Lily the Loud. Hello? Uncle Derek, Lily said softly, inching behind my leg. Natalie, his wife, offered a quick hug. Always kind. Always distant. She treated me like I was holding a ticking bomb she hoped wouldn't go off during dinner. Paul, my uncle by marriage, was setting up his camera equipment by the window. Family legacy documentary, he said, almost apologetically. Your dad's idea. I nodded, avoiding eye contact. I didn't want to be in it. I've got wireless mics set up all over, he added quietly, trying to catch natural moments. I laughed under my breath. Natural's the last thing this family knows how to be. We were shown to our room, smallest one in the house. View of the neighbor's trash bins. Lily unpacked her swimsuits while singing a made-up song about frogs. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, staring at my reflection in the dresser mirror. Same dark eyes. Same tired shoulders. But something different this time. Resolve. I had told myself I was here for Lily. But the truth was, part of me needed to know if I could survive being seen again. Not as the failure, not as the too much daughter, but as me. And I didn't know yet that the house would soon test that in the most brutal way. Because in less than 48 hours, I'd be walking off that porch with Lily in my arms, a slap echoing in my ears, and a plan forming in my chest like wildfire. But right then, all I heard was Lily's voice. "Mom, do you think they'll like my song?" I swallowed hard. "I think they'll hear it," I whispered. The morning sun shimmered off Lake Michigan like glass. Too perfect. Too still. It made me uneasy. I stood at the kitchen island with my mug of black coffee, listening to the eerie silence of wealth. No one shouted. No one sang. No pots clanged. The house was full, but the air felt staged. Lily padded in, already in her swimsuit with her towel dragging behind her like a cape. Her curls were still damp from brushing. Her cheeks flushed from excitement. "Can I swim now?" she whispered, as though the house might punish her for speaking too loudly. "We'll wait until after breakfast," I said, smoothing her hair. "Maybe see if Uncle Paul wants to go with you." Paul, the only person here who ever really looked me in the eye. He wasn't blood. Married into the family. Maybe that's why he hadn't been infected by whatever toxin ran through the Thompson DNA. He gave Lily a GoPro the last time we visited, told her stories mattered more than perfect smiles. She adored him. From behind me, I heard my mother's shoes, those soft-soled designer flats that made no sound unless she wanted them to. She wore pale lavender and pearls before Ada. Mom. Like she was starring in a 1950s soap opera. "Coffee's a little bitter." "Dear, you might want to add cream," she said, pouring herself tea instead. "And next time, dress Lily before you brush her hair. It keeps the frizz down, so." I smiled politely, bit down on every word that wanted to claw out of my throat. "She's 6, I said. "We're not submitting her to Vogue." Eleanor blinked once, her smile as stiff as her posture. It's never too early to teach presentation. At breakfast, the table was a Pinterest board. Come to life, fresh fruit, frittata, linen napkins folded into swans. Everyone looked like they belonged in a catalog for wholesome American summer. Except for me and Lily. Natalie sat beside Derek, sipping her green smoothie in silence. She offered Lily a kind smile, but didn't say much else. She was the kind of woman who always seemed half absent, like she'd trained herself to vanish in plain sight. I couldn't tell if she was surviving this family or enabling it. Derek, meanwhile, was in full performance mode. "I closed the Cambridge deal last week," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Even got the CEO to throw in a bonus clause." My father beamed. "That's the kind of negotiation we raised you for. And Natalie's practice just expanded," Derek added with a smug glance. "Pediatric referrals are booming." "Wonderful," Eleanor chirped. "Such an accomplished couple." Then, her eyes flicked to me. "And how's the marketing assistant job, Audrey? Any promotions on the horizon?" I felt the heat crawl up my neck. Not from shame, from fury at how well-rehearsed this dance was. "Actually, I was just assigned a brand portfolio," I said evenly. "A children's literacy campaign. I pitched the core messaging." Derek snorted. "So, slogans for coloring books,
Lily looked up.
Confused. My mom writes words that make people feel things. Dead silence. Then, my mother smiled tight-lipped. That's poetic. Darling. I met her eyes. It's real. Mom. After breakfast, we went down to the dock. Lily ran ahead, chasing dragonflies. Derek followed, drink in hand. Already on his second mimosa, I stayed behind, watching the scene unfold like a ghost outside my own body. Paul was setting up a tripod, trying to get a good time-lapse of the lake. Is it for the documentary? I asked. He nodded. Your dad wants authentic family legacy vibes. I laughed. Bitter. Did he request we stage a fake Thanksgiving too? Paul turned toward me, his voice quiet. You know I don't edit things to lie, right? That made me pause. I believe you, I said. And I did. Because Paul's camera was the only honest eye in this house. Later, while Lily swam with Paul watching from the dock, I sat on the porch swing with my mom. I always imagined you'd have more children, she said out of nowhere. I imagined a lot of things, I replied. She sipped her tea. Divorce doesn't have to define you. I don't let it. You do. Her gaze sharpened. I just want what's best for you. No, Mom. You want what's most acceptable. There was a beat of silence, a held breath between decades of tension. She looked at me, voice tight. You've always been a little too loud. Audrey. Like Lily. You should teach her to temper that before it costs her. My hands clenched on the armrest. She's not going to grow up learning to shrink herself to make others more comfortable. My mother shook her head. Don't turn her into you. And that was the moment I knew she didn't see me. She never had. That night, we had a family dinner on the deck. String lights flickered above like fireflies trapped in jars. The wine flowed. Conversations turned syrupy and slurred. Paul kept his camera rolling discreetly. One of the wireless mics had been clipped to the outdoor awning, right above the table. No one noticed. Everyone was too busy laughing about Derek's latest bonus. Natalie barely touched her food. Lily tried to talk about her music class. She mentioned wanting to sing a solo at school. Derek interrupted her, saying, Not every kid needs to be a pop star. Lil, focus on something useful. She's allowed to have dreams, I said, sharper than I intended. Sure, he shrugged. As long as she doesn't think being loud equals being special. That was it. Not the first jab. Not the 100th. But it hit different this time. Because it wasn't about me anymore. They were training her. Like they trained me. And I was letting it happen. Later that night, Lily curled up beside me on the twin bed, wearing one of my old t-shirts as pajamas. Her little voice pierced the dark. Mom. Yeah. Baby. Why doesn't Grandpa like it when I sing? I froze. My throat ached. I swallowed hard. He's just not very good at listening, I said. Will you listen? She asked. Always, I whispered. Always. Always. I tucked the blanket around her, watched her chest rise and fall, and right there under the weight of 100 silences, 1,000 swallowed words, I knew something had to break. They wouldn't do this to her. I wouldn't let them. The next morning, there was a barbecue. Family tradition. Burgers. Beers. And backhanded compliments. The sun was high, and the patio buzzed with energy. I saw Derek pour himself a whiskey before noon. Lily had on her favorite sundress, humming quietly, holding that small silver necklace I gave her the night before, the one my dad once mocked me for wearing as a child, called it cheap trinket trash. I watched her turn it over in her hands like it meant the world. And that's when it started. The moment that would shatter everything. Derek stood, walked toward Lily. His voice got louder, and his hand started to rise. It happened faster than I could breathe. Derek stepped forward. His face twisted something between mockery and fury. Lily was standing at the edge of the patio near the grill, still clutching the little silver necklace I'd given her. I think she was humming under her breath, that same tune from her school music class. And then his hand came down. Sharp, loud, sudden. The slap cracked through the backyard like thunder across glass. Lily staggered back, her sandals scraping the wood. She didn't fall, but the sound alone knocked the air out of my lungs. She blinked, frozen, her tiny fingers flying up to cover her cheek. Her eyes didn't tear up right away. No, first came confusion. That stunned silence of someone trying to make the world make sense again. Then came the tears. Quiet, frightened, too proud to wail, but too young to stop them. And still no one moved. My father barely flinched. He was slicing into his burger. Methodical. She needed to learn some shame, he muttered, like he was narrating a book of life lessons no one asked for. Eleanor, the matriarch, the grand observer of family decorum, lifted her wine glass, took a dainty sip, and gave an amused little chuckle. She's just like her mother, she said. Too much voice, too little discipline. Natalie sat at the edge of the patio, lips pressed together, gaze locked on her plate. I couldn't tell if she was disgusted or terrified, and Paul had frozen behind his camera tripod. His hand hovered over the lens. He didn't speak, didn't move, but he saw. He saw everything. My heart was thundering in my chest. My ears rang. I felt my body leaning forward, but my mind, it split. One part of me wanted to scream, to leap over the table and rip Derek's entitled hand off his smug body, to drag my child out of this rotting fairy tale nightmare and never look back. The other part was 6 years old again, standing in the hallway of this very house, in a stiff party dress, sobbing after my father slapped me for talking over him during a dinner toast. "You embarrassed the family," he said, dragging me by the wrist into the guest room. "You'll thank me when you learn some manners." I never thanked him. I never forgot. And now, it was happening again. I moved. Fast. No warning. I crossed the deck, scooped Lily into my arms, and held her tight against my chest. She was trembling, hot tears soaking through my shirt, her fists clutching my collar like a lifeline. "We're done," I said, my voice shaking. Low. Deadly. "Audrey," Derek started, smug as ever. "Don't be dramatic. Say another word." And I swear, my voice cracked into something raw, something ancient. It silenced everyone, even Derek. Lily whimpered against me. "She's just a child," I said. Louder now. "You hit my daughter." My father rolled his eye. "Spare us the lecture. Audrey, you're the one who's always been too soft." Eleanor leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowed. "You always overreact. Maybe if you raised her with some respect." I snapped. Kindness. Humanity. Dead silence. I turned to leave. And that's when Paul stepped forward. His voice was calm, steady. "It's all on tape," he said. Everyone turned. The mic was still live. "The one over the patio," he added, glancing up toward the awning. It picked up everything. The slap. The comments. Every word. Derek's face went pale. My father's eyes narrowed into slits. "You're filming us without consent," he barked. "You all signed off on the family docuseries," Paul said. "You wanted raw and honest." Well, here it is. Eleanor's wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. "Delete it," my father ordered. Paul didn't respond, just looked at me, and in that moment, something passed between us. Not sympathy, not pity, allegiance. I left, took Lily back to our room, slammed the door. Her tiny body still clung to me like a koala. I sat on the bed, rocking her, whispering nothing and everything. "You're okay. You're safe. Mommy's here." But I knew that wasn't enough. I'd protected her in that moment. But what about all the moments to come? When people told her to be quiet, to be less, when the world started clipping her wings before she even learned to fly. I couldn't let this family shape her, not like they did to me. She sat up, eyes swollen but steady. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. "God." "No, baby," I said, kissing her forehead. "You were perfect. You are perfect." She pulled the silver necklace from under her dress. "I dropped it," she whispered. "When Uncle Derek, when—" I took it, held it in my palm. This old, tarnished chain, my childhood necklace, the one my father used to mock, said it looked like it came from a gas station vending machine. And yet, I had held on to it for decades. Why? Because it was mine. Because it was real. I looked at Lily. "Do you want it back?" I asked. She nodded. I clasped it around her neck. Her chin lifted an inch. Shoulders straightened. She looked like a warrior in miniature. An hour later, Paul knocked gently on our door. He didn't come in. Just passed me a flash drive. "I made a backup," he said. "Keep it safe." I held it in my hand like it was a weapon. Because it was— "Thank you," I said, voice tight. He didn't smile, just nodded. "They can't hide this one, Audrey," he said quietly. "Not anymore." And that's when I knew. I wasn't going to run this time. I was going to burn it all down on camera. We left that night. I didn't pack properly. Just shoved clothes into our overnight bag. My hands shaking with a mix of fury and adrenaline. Lily was already asleep in the car by the time I backed out of the gravel driveway. She clutched her stuffed turtle and that tiny silver necklace like both were shields. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. Because that place, that family, they had already told me everything I needed to hear. And now, it was my turn. Back in our Chicago apartment, I felt the silence like never before. Usually it was peaceful, comforting. This time, it felt charged, like the calm before something dangerous. I sat at the kitchen table, flash drive in hand, and stared at my laptop. Paul had labeled the folder July 8th, Patio Raw Audio. I clicked it open. It started with birdsong, chairs creaking, silverware clinking. Then Derek's voice, Lily's humming. The slap, clear as day. My father's voice followed. She needed to learn some shame. Then my mother's laugh. Then silence. I paused it, my heart pounding. I'd always thought the worst pain came from being hurt. Turns out, it's worse when they know they're hurting you and do it anyway. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked laps in the living room, barefoot on cool hardwood, planning. I couldn't just post the audio online. They'd deny it, spin it, say it was doctored, call me unstable like they always had. No, I needed to strike smarter, cleaner, personal. I opened my email and stared at the blank message for a long time before typing 2 words. "You should hear this." Attach the clip. Sent it to Natalie. No explanation. No context. She would understand. She was there. She'd heard it once in real time. Now, she'd hear it again without the noise of her loyalty muffling the truth. No. I waited 2 days. No reply. But I saw she opened the message. My email client had the tracking enabled. She'd clicked, listened. Then something strange happened. She unfollowed Derek on Instagram, then deleted their anniversary post.
It was subtle.
Quiet. But in my world, it was a scream. And it gave me exactly what I needed. A crack. So I pushed. The next step wasn't revenge. It was illumination. I wrote a blog post under a pseudonym E. Monroe. My middle initials and my grandmother's maiden name. Title: The day my brother slapped my daughter and my parents laughed. I stripped names, left out dates, but every detail, the silver necklace, the lake house, the slap, the laugh, it was all there. Raw, cold, honest. I posted it to a parenting forum I'd been lurking in for months, shared it anonymously on a few subreddit threads. Then I closed the laptop and waited. By morning, it had 12 views. By afternoon, 87,000. Hundreds of comments. Some furious, some heartbroken. This broke me. I was that child once. You're not alone. I was the mother who stayed silent, never again. Please tell me someone has audio. We've got to believe her. And then someone did post it. Not me. Not Paul. Someone found the short raw clip that Paul had quietly uploaded to his private Vimeo portfolio months ago, just a placeholder. He said. It wasn't labeled, but the internet is always watching. They pulled the slap, the laugh, the quote, and it exploded. By the end of the week, the phrase she needed to learn some shame was trending on Twitter under hidden abuse. I didn't say a word publicly. I didn't have to. Derek's company issued a vague press release about internal investigations and behavior unbecoming of our values. He lost 2 brand deals within 48 hours. And Natalie, she finally replied. A simple text. Thank you for not staying quiet. I thought I was crazy. You've confirmed I'm not. That one text, after years of watching her fold in on herself, hit me harder than I expected. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing a woman can do is believe another woman. I was in the middle of making mac and cheese for Lily when the next twist came. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Voicemail. I played it on speaker, thinking it was spam. It wasn't. It was my mother. Audrey. I hope you're happy. Whatever you think you've done, it's cruel. We're a family. Families don't air dirty laundry to strangers. You've hurt everyone. Then a pause. I didn't raise you to be vengeful. I laughed out loud, bitter and breathless. No, Mom. I said to no one. You raised me to be silent. I just finally stopped listening. That night, Lily curled beside me on the couch, her head on my lap. She looked up at me and said, You're brave. I ran my fingers through her hair. No, baby, I said. We are brave. She smiled. And then, out of nowhere, she whispered, I want to sing that song again. The one from school. Go ahead, I said. She did. Soft, clear, beautiful, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't hush her. I let her fill the room with sound. It wasn't just music. It was a declaration, a reclaiming, a middle finger to every person who ever told us to be less. The next morning, I checked my inbox and found something I hadn't expected. An invitation. A producer from a parenting podcast I respected had written, We read your piece. If you're ready to tell your story out loud, we'd be honored to help you share it. I stared at the screen. Then I clicked reply. Let's do it. Because if they thought I was finished, If they thought a single slap would be buried beneath polite smiles and curated holiday cards, they didn't realize I hadn't even started. The podcast episode dropped on a Monday. It was titled The Slap That Shattered the Silence. My voice. Edited but raw. Threaded through soft piano underscoring. I had recorded it in one take, refusing to reread anything. I didn't want polish. I wanted truth. I spoke of what it meant to grow up in a house where silence was currency, where women were told to be delicate but not demanding, where being passionate meant difficult, and being difficult meant disposable. And I spoke about Lily, how she looked at me with betrayal in her eyes, not because Derek slapped her, but because I stood frozen when he did. The day the podcast aired, I dropped Lily off at school and sat in my car for nearly an hour, hands gripping the wheel, trying to breathe through the noise in my chest. But then, the phone buzzed. Hundreds of messages, most from strangers, and one from Natalie. I left him. I took the kids? Thank you. I blinked hard. My hands trembled as I replied, I've got a place you can stay if you need it. Just say the word. Her message came back.
Already booked a hotel.
But I'd love to meet for coffee soon. Just to breathe like real people. That was the first time I cried that week. Not out of grief. Out of relief. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it comes in small moments where a woman reclaims her breath. But Derek wasn't done. That night, I received a legal notice. He was suing me for defamation of character, citing damage to his reputation, lost income, and emotional distress. I stared at the paper, stunned. He had the audacity to say he was the victim. My first reaction was panic. My hands went cold, heart spiking, stomach twisted into a tight knot. But then, I laughed. Because I had the tape. I had the flash drive. And I had Paul. I called him. He picked up immediately. I saw the lawsuit, he said.
Are you okay?
No, I said. But I'm angry. And that's close enough. He didn't hesitate. I've still got the backups. Audio and video. Will you testify? If it comes to that, I'll do more than that, he said. I'll give them the whole library. Your dad knew we were recording. Signed off on every session. Derek, too. That's when I remembered Eleanor had actually smiled at the camera that morning, sipping her tea like she was being interviewed for Southern Living. They knew. They knew. But I wanted more than defense. I wanted to turn this counterattack into a collapse. So I took the flash drive to a journalist I trusted, a woman named Celeste, from a digital outlet known for deep dive pieces on family power structures and abuse hidden behind legacy. I handed her everything. The patio audio. The blog post trail. The voicemail from my mother. Photos of Lily's face. Just minutes after the slap. Celeste listened silently. Took notes. Asked clear, hard questions. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just believed me. And that, in itself, was radical. We won't just do an exposé, she said. We'll do a timeline. Audio. Intercutting interviews. Show the rot, not just the fallout. She paused. But Audrey, are you sure? This will go viral. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. I nodded. My daughter already saw who they are. She deserves to see who I am. So, the article dropped 1 week later. Titled, Bloodline. How one Midwestern family protected its legacy by destroying its daughters. The internet exploded. It wasn't just about me anymore. Thousands of women shared their own stories. Hashtags like generational silence and break the frame trended for days. And then, The board of Derek's firm issued a statement. They weren't just suspending him. They were cutting ties completely, indefinitely. Thompson's behavior is incompatible with the values of inclusion, respect, and accountability that we promote. Funny. They'd promoted him 3 times, despite clear HR complaints from women in his department. But suddenly, now that the public was watching, they had a conscience. Typical. Still, I took the win. The real blow came when the family charity gala got canceled. A reporter confronted my parents as they left a country club brunch. How do you respond to the audio where you laughed after your granddaughter was struck? Eleanor froze. Howard pushed past the cameras, stone-faced. That clip circulated with over 4 million views in under 72 hours. The internet called it the Lake House tapes. And for the first time in their lives, my parents had to shut up. But there was one final move I hadn't played yet. A letter, handwritten, on simple white stationery. I mailed it to my father's office. Knew he still checked the old mail, even after retirement. It said, "You always said reputation was everything, so I made sure everyone knew who you really are." I didn't do it for revenge. I did it so Lily would never grow up thinking your approval was worth bleeding for. I signed it Audrey, then added Lily's drawing on the back a rainbow, a smiling sun, and 2 stick figures holding hands. Us. A week later, Natalie came over for coffee. She looked different. Not polished, not poised, but awake. We sat on the couch while Lily showed her how to make paper frogs. "I'm still scared," she admitted, "but also free." I smiled. That's how it starts. And just when I thought the worst was over, I got an email. From Eleanor. Subject: a final offer. I opened it, and what I read stopped me cold. The subject line read, "A final offer." I stared at it for 10 minutes before I dared to click. Not because I was afraid of my mother, but because I already knew her brand of venom came gift-wrapped in civility, the way a letter bomb might arrive with a bow. The message was short, clinical, no greeting. "We've spoken with legal soul. If you retract the story, issue a public statement clarifying that your brother's actions were exaggerated, and confirm the podcast was emotionally interpreted, we're prepared to offer a settlement. $250,000. Tax-free. A college fund for Lily. In return, silence. My mouth went dry. That was it. No apology. No accountability. Just hush money and lace gloves. She signed it. Sincerely. Eleanor T. Family first, always. I laughed. Actually laughed, because if that email told me anything, it was that the house of cards was collapsing, and all they had left to throw at me was money and empty phrases. I didn't reply. I forwarded it straight to Celeste, who added it as a postscript to the article's follow-up. The headline: "The Price of Silence, $250,000. It went viral again faster this time. And with it, the final thread unraveled. Derek called me the next morning. I didn't answer, so he left a voicemail. "You've ruined me. Audrey. You happy now? I hope that podcast makes you rich. Because I'm done." Natalie took the kids. Dad won't even return my calls. People cross the street when they see me. I deleted it. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need it anymore. This wasn't about rage anymore. It was about freedom. And then came the unexpected. A letter. Not from Eleanor. Not from Derek. Not from a lawyer. From my father. Not an email. A real letter. Typewritten. On his old monogram stationery. The one I used to steal to write fake book reports as a kid. It read,
Audrey.
I suppose I should hate you.
But I don't.
I don't understand you. I never have. But watching the world respond to you the way I never could, I realize now, maybe it wasn't you who was broken. Maybe it was me. Your mother is furious. I've left the house. I'm at the lake. Alone. Don't come. But if you ever do, you'll find the attics unlocked. The cedar chest is still there. I never threw it out. I folded the letter 3 times, placed it on the counter, sat still for a long time. The cedar chest. I hadn't thought about that thing in years. It held scraps of my childhood old journals, broken lockets, half-finished songs I'd written on napkins. He'd kept it. Why? That weekend, Lily had a sleepover with Natalie's kids. It was her first night away since the lake house. I was nervous. She wasn't. Mom, she said with a little roll of her eyes. I'll call you if I miss you. She didn't call. So I drove. Back to the lake. The house looked the same from the outside, polished. Magazine. Perfect. But inside. Doustier. Quieter. Lonely. I walked up the stairs like a ghost retracing her own footprints. The attic was warm. Smelled of cedar and mothballs. And there it was. The chest. I knelt beside it. Opened the lid. Inside were my old things. My drawings. My essays. A cracked cassette labeled Audrey, talent show. Age 10. A tiny photo of me and my brother before we became enemies. But what caught my breath was a crumpled letter I'd written my father at 13. Please come to my recital. Please. Just once. I remembered this letter. I never sent it. I thought I'd thrown it away. But here it was, folded neatly, preserved, like it had mattered. I didn't cry, but I felt something soft press against the hardened shell I'd worn for decades. He had seen me. Just too late. Aww. I found him outside, sitting on the dock with a cup of coffee. He looked older, smaller. He didn't turn when he heard my footsteps. Just said, "Did you find it?" I nodded. "You read them all." All of them. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "You always had more guts than I did." "No," I replied. "You just buried yours earlier." He nodded like that hurt. Because it did. Then, quietly, "Is it too late?" I looked out at the lake. "For you and me?" I asked. "For Lily and me." I hesitated. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But if you want to find out, you'll have to show her." "Not me." He nodded. "I can try," he said. I stood up. "Try harder than you did with me." Then I walked away. And for the first time, he didn't try to stop me. Back home, Lily was already asleep. She'd drawn something in crayon before bed and left it on my pillow. It was us hand in hand standing on a hill. Behind us, a house burning. Flames high, bright orange. In front of us, trees, sky, stars, freedom. I ran my fingers over the picture and whispered, "You get it? Don't you?" She did. The next morning, I had coffee with Paul. We sat outside the corner cafe where we used to write together before the pandemic. He was smiling. "The docuseries got greenlit," he said. "What?" "Streaming service picked it up. They want to use the family footage. With your permission, you can narrate." I blinked. "You serious?" He nodded. "But only if you want it." I told them this story is yours. I thought about Lily, about Natalie, about the thousands of women who'd messaged me, who were still stuck in houses full of silence and curated smiles. Then I smiled back. "Let's do it." And just as Paul reached into his bag to pull out the draft contract, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail. I pressed play. It was Eleanor, and her voice sharp, clipped, breathless, said just 6 words. "You think this story is over? You think this story is over?" Her voice echoed in my ears long after the voicemail ended. Cold. Controlled. Not shaken, strategic. That's how Eleanor always operated. As if life were a chessboard and she owned every square. The queen in a pastel cardigan. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The game was already over. But that didn't mean she wouldn't try for one last move. The next week, I got an email from a private investigator. He'd been hired, apparently, to look into potential misconduct around the leaked recordings. I smiled. They were trying to scare me. But what they didn't realize, what Eleanor never realized, was that once you survive being erased by your own family, you stop fearing shadows. I forwarded the email to Celeste with a one-line note. "They're still playing dress-up with threats." She responded within an hour. "They're circling the drain. Let them." The documentary dropped the next month, titled What We Leave Behind: Families, Power, and the Cost of Silence. It opened with footage of the lake house, quiet and golden in the early morning sun. Paul had chosen a shot where a spider spun a web in the corner of a porch beam. The metaphor wasn't subtle, but it was true. I watched the premiere alone, curled up on the couch. Lily asleep in the next room. My voice narrated the opening lines. I was raised to believe that keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's pressure. And, eventually, it bursts. The response was overwhelming. Women, men, survivors, even teachers, therapists, social workers, people who'd seen this pattern repeat across decades and cultures. They wrote, "You've put language to a wound I couldn't name. I watched this with my daughter. We cried together. This gave me permission to finally walk away." And then a letter arrived, handwritten, from someone I didn't expect. My grandmother's sister. She was in her 80s, lived in Oregon. I had only met her once as a child. She wrote, "When I was 12, my father hit me for talking back. My mother told me to be quiet, not to shame him. I'm so proud you broke the chain. I only wish I'd had your courage when I was your age." That letter stayed on my fridge for weeks, right beside Lily's newest drawing. A girl standing on a stage, mouth open wide, surrounded by stars. And Eleanor. Well, she didn't go quietly, but her grip loosened. The board of a local arts council dropped her name from their donors list. The charity foundation she chaired restructured. The women's luncheon she hosted annually was suddenly postponed indefinitely. The world didn't shun her. It simply stopped applauding. Which, for a woman like Eleanor, was worse. Howard stayed silent. I suspect he understood what silence really costs now. As for Derek, he's moved out of state. Natalie got full custody. She's doing well. We text once a week, sometimes more. We've become our own kind of family. The kind that doesn't pretend. One day, Lily asked me if she could sing at the school assembly. She said, "I want to sing loud. Mommy, so people hear me even in the back." I choked up, and I nodded. "You sing as loud as you want, baby." She smiled. And that smile, that's the legacy I choose. I have learned something in all this. Revenge is very surly dramatic. It's not fire and explosions. It's not fists or screaming matches or viral tweets. Real revenge is living well, living loudly, living free. It's waking up and choosing not to hide. It's your daughter asking to be heard instead of learning to be quiet. It's silence turning into music. Sa. So if you're watching this, if you've ever been told to shut up for the sake of family, if you've been told your truth was too inconvenient, too messy, too loud, I want you to hear me. You are not the problem. Their comfort is not more important than your safety. Their image is not more valuable than your voice. And it is never too late to break the pattern. We survived. But more than that, we transformed. We took their shame and spun it into power. We took their silence and made it sing. We are not victims. We are the authors now. So comment. Share this if it moved you. And if you've got your own story, drop it in the comments. Because every voice that speaks gives someone else permission to stop whispering. Let's build something louder. Together.